from this point, now that we have created our production folder, QC'd our documents, created an endorsement template, and bait stamped our documents as that's working its way through, we are now ready to actually export the documents out. And so again, what we're going to do, we're going to go back to settings, export exchange. And we're going to go to these export templates. So I think that these export templates are really going to be more, you can create your own, obviously, but I want to first go through the export templates that come with each database that are created and kind of their uses. So the PDF export template, this is what you want to export out all the documents out as PDFs. A lot of these export templates are pretty aptly named. The privilege log template, this is going to generate a log in CSV format of all of the privileged documents in a particular folder or set. The production template, this one is based off of ESI standards, and this is what clients typically use when producing to co-counsel or opposing counsel. This is actually what we're going to use as kind of an example for production and is usually the go-to guide. So we'll walk through this template in just a second. And then there's the work product template. So if a client has created any custom fields and if they want to be able to provide that metadata to say co-counsel or an expert, probably wouldn't want to share that with opposing parties and give them insight into your strategy and thought process. But this is the template you would use to capture that information in your export. So for the purposes of this training, let's go ahead and walk through what's contained within the production template so you understand how our system processes these documents for export. So if I click in here to edit this, step one is just the name and the description of the template. And so you can see production template based on ESI standards. Step two, this is where you're going to be indicating what files you're including and the format in which you want to include those files within your production folder. So within this production template, we are going to be including text files. We are going to be, which is essentially just all of the text pulled from those documents. We'll also be including images for all the files in this production template. So this is just allowing whoever you're producing this to be able to view the documents in that pretty aesthetically pleasing way that they're meant to be shown instead of reading it purely like lines of code. So they will be imaged in TIFF or JPEG format, depending on their color. And then when it comes to the image load file, I usually have all 4 checked on here. Just better to have them and not need them than to need them and not have them. But generally speaking, the most commonly used file type or image load file type is going to be OPT, which is kind of the standard. So if there's one that is most frequently used and required, it's that one, but I just go ahead and supply all 4 of them. The original natives and files in native format. So this is important. You can see here that make smart exceptions is recommended. I think that this should have like a little caret and have an adjective highly recommended in here. The reason why is because if you include the natives in native format with no exceptions, you are doing a completely native production and providing those original documents in their original format to whoever is getting this, which is fine if that's what you want to do. But if you're producing to opposing counsel, you in all likelihood will want to click on make smart exceptions, because this is going to produce all documents in their native format with the exception of any documents that have redactions on them. Which is important because if you were to produce them in their native format, it's not going to have those redactions that you placed on those images, which kind of defeats the purpose of redacting that information. So I always make sure to harp on making smart redactions, especially when exporting externally. Step 3. So this is going to be the file naming priority and how the files will be named when you produce or export them out. So we always recommend keeping the Bates numbers, especially so if, again, assuming that when you're producing externally that you are producing documents that have Bates numbering on them, that's going to be the unique identifier that they should be named by. But if the documents were not Bates stamped, it would then go to the control number. And if there was no control number, then they would go to the stored file name. And if all else fails and they didn't have a subject title or a folder or anything like that, then they would be named by their next point ID. But obviously, the Bates numbering is the most logical when it comes to naming the documents in an export for production. And I'd say that almost always people are using this. If you want to, you can drag and drop and change things up. But the vast majority of time, people are going to use Bates number as their file naming priority. And the reason that I don't say all the time is because I'm a big Star Wars fan, and I believe that, I don't know if you guys know this quote, but only a Sith deals in absolutes. So just a little Star Wars humor to keep me entertained. So I'm going to go ahead and skip over to step 4, which is creating that load file, which is very important when producing two opposing counsels. This is where you're going to indicate if you want to include a load file when producing your document set, and what is going to be and what metadata you'll be providing to whoever you're exporting this out to. So the load file for the production template has already been created and associated with the production template. You can see here which fields you'll be providing. It looks like we're going to be providing 33 fields, and here are the field names, and it's a production template. But if we wanted to create our own that matched our ESI protocol specifically, we can go ahead and click Create New, and we'd be able to choose what we want on here. We could say we want Bates range, Bates start, Bates end, bag attach. I want to see who was CC'd. You can move things around. This is all in alphabetical order, so you probably would want to move it around. But you could say document author, document date, and then drag and drop however you want it to look. And when you do, you would go ahead and give it some sort of name, and then you would go ahead and save the load file template. But in the interest of time, we're not going to go ahead and create our own. Just wanted to show you where you could go ahead and find that information if you needed to customize that load file that you're creating. And again, I think I forgot to mention this. We are creating load files in CSV and DAT format, which is the most common types for productions. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel any changes that I've made to my export template. Now that we've created our export template, we can see, and also I want to point out, you can always start from scratch and create your own export templates to do whatever it is that you need to do, customize it to your ESI protocol, customize it to your specific needs, and you can work from there. So now that we've done that, we can go back to the review. We can go back to the review, and we are now ready to actually export these documents out to opposing counsel. And while we're here, let me just double check we have gone through all of the documents. And there we are. The Bates stamping has finished. This one has its confidentiality and a Bates stamp, but it looks like it went all the way through, which is awesome. So now we're ready to actually export this out. So what we do, again, if you need to remove the numbering endorsements, you could. It would re-image those documents. You could re-edit your endorsement template and then re-endorse. But it looks like everything worked well for us, so we're good to go. So now we're going to go ahead and click on Export. So we're going to export out our production folder, and let's call it Prod 1 2022. I'm very original, but I just like naming it and then dating it. And then choose what we're going to do. We're using our production template that we just went through. This is telling you, please export responsibly, that these documents are going to be shared outside of NextPoint. And so we're saying, yeah, that's exactly what we want to do. So then we click on export. Your export request is submitted and will begin processing.